Petroleum Industry Act gas initiatives will transform Nigeria's energy sector, says Oshibajo. Nigeria entitled to $3.35 billion in fresh International Monetary Fund rights allocation. 25 banks' profits dropped by 482 billion naira as CBN restricts 9.5 trillion naira deposits, plus oil rises as full U.S. clearance for COVID-19 vaccine stocks fuel demand hopes. The details of this and more on Business Express, and we are reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Musa Abubakar. Now, Nigeria, together with other developing countries, are expected to share $275 billion out of the International Monetary Fund's $650 billion special drawing rights. Nigeria is currently entitled to receive about $3.35 billion as its share of the SDR fund. Kristalina Georgieva, IMF's managing director, said this in a statement in Washington, D.C., while announcing the commencement of the distribution of the SDR. She added that of the $275 billion, low-income countries will receive about $21 billion, which is equivalent to as much as 6% of gross domestic product in some cases. She described the SDR allocation as a critical component of IMF's broader effort to support countries through the pandemic, which includes $117 billion in new financing for 85 countries. The Nigerian government is in the process of implementing the long-term national development plan across all sectors. To this end, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, in collaboration with development partners, have organized capacity building for special advisors and technical assistants of ministers in the country to prepare national long-term development plan. Nneka Oko reports that the training was declared open by the Minister of State, Budget and National Planning.
The key MPAs have established a performance matrix to track and measure the presidential deliverables 2019 to 2023. Additionally, eye monitoring is to be introduced in government websites to enable Nigerians to post pictures of project status vis-a-vis the cash that is released.
The economic plan has been put together. We are now at the stage of implementation. So, due to the fact that they need to put some few things together for the implementation, we are bringing them together again to build their capacity on how to go on with the implementation of the long-term development plan.
The latest figures from the 2021 Banking Industry Report shows that 20 commercial banks and 5 merchant banks' profits dropped by 482 billion naira in 12 months as more than 9.5 trillion naira cash restriction policy implemented by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN. The funds were reserved by the CBN during the bank's financial year 2020 in line with its cash reserve requirement policy. The measures were meant to moderate inflation and maintain exchange rate stability. The 2021 report released by Augusto Co said the Apex Bank raised and standardized the CRR a portion of banks' deposit kept with the CBN at 27.5% for both merchant and commercial banks. The quarantine funds with the CBN at zero interest rates depleted banks' profitability within the review period. Now, the dollar was smartened on Tuesday following its sharpest one-day fall since May, though traders were wary of chasing the mood-driven move lower ahead of Federal Reserve symposium that could map out an end to stimulus and asset purchases. How much is the Naira exchanging for other currencies? Let's find out. The federal government and relevant key players in food production value chain are collaborating towards improving food supply chain in the country. This is coming as the government and the African Development Bank kickstart the implementation of agro-processing zones and states. Musa Wabalio has more.
The outbreak of coronavirus has continued to have negative impacts on global food supply chain. Countries that relied on foreign nations for their staple foods are having tough time to import enough to feed their citizens. Nigeria is having a different situation, with figures indicating increase on agricultural activities despite the challenges posed by coronavirus. But what is disturbing not only to the citizens but Federal Ministry of Agriculture is the high rate of inflation.
We may produce enough food to eat, but people will still sleep with hunger because they have no money to buy food. And the reason being,
the convergence of who is who in agricultural value chain from within and outside the country in this hall is to discuss two fundamental issues relating to food supply system. The first line of discourse is the ways of ensuring staple price of food items post-COVID-19. The second is the industrialization for processing and export.
To breed crops varieties and production practices that ensure competitive and profitable production of crops to satisfy our needs and surplus for export.
We work closely with the federal government to encourage the conditions for reducing violence and fostering better relations between communities.
While British investors are indicating interest of investing in the Nigeria's agricultural value chain, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, is set to key into the processing zones initiative.
That is the tone for our discussion. We have in the studio Senior Special Advisor to African Development Bank President on Industrialization, Professor Oyebanji Oyelara Oyeyinka. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, there's this report indicating that the agro-processing zone may likely take off this year. What's the state of preparation?
Thank you so much. We started having conversations around this with the country since 2019, April. The government had requested a loan of $500 million for this initiative. Okay. But we have
you say $500 million?
$500 million. That's okay. The total. Okay. But of course, that's usually a seed. We have a lot of other partners joining us. IFAD joining us, Islamic Development Bank joining us with very huge and significant financing around it. So it's not about money. It's really about having a big initiative that is so credible. And this is what the African Development Bank brings to the table. We have, out of the first set of states that we screened, 8 locations, Kaduna, Kano, FCT, Kwara, Oyo, Ogun, and then Cross River and Imo states for this first phase this year. So we had a big, what we call an appraiser mission in April, May of this year, which was extremely successful. Visited every state, confirmed all the parameters that is necessary to approve this loan. So hopefully everything is in place, and we are going to the board in October this year. After that, it's about implementation on the ground in these 8 locations.
That's when implementation?
Once we get out of the board in October, first week of October,
okay.
The rest is now in-country implementation.
Okay.
Meaning that everything is now in the hands of our country.
Okay, what informed the selection of the states?
Yes, the states. Now, we have every state is going to be covered.
Okay.
That is the ultimate aim of this project. Every state that is interested will be covered. In fact, as we speak, we already have almost 10 states lining up. Okay. Once this is done, once we get implementation of these 8 locations, we want to show the example that this works. As I was saying during the meeting, this is nothing new for countries that have really made progress in this. If a country like Vietnam, we ended our 2 wars almost about the same time in 1975, it ended this war. It has 376 agro parks, 376. So it's not, and in fact, almost 70% of them are agro-industrial processing zones. A country like Ethiopia has 24 agri parks. It's leading in Africa. Half of it, again, about these kinds of industrial parks. So this was conceived by Dr. Akim Adesina when he was Minister of Agriculture. And we are now in 17 countries in Africa. So it is extremely important that we get it done in Nigeria. We know that once we show these examples, Nigerians are very entrepreneurial. A lot of private actors will begin to build their own zones.
Okay, I understand that it was 6, then it was increased to 8 processing zones.
Yes, yes. I mean, that was, again, of course, we are in a very complex country. We need to cover every geopolitical zone. Our choices are really not based on politics. This is the point. In fact, the 2 states that were added afterwards were states that actually made the move, Imo and Cross River. They made the move and moved very rapidly. Initially, they were a bit slow in coming on board. We have a readiness index. You have to tick the box. Do you have a financial statements? You have your feasibility studies? You have environmental studies? All of those things, we had to tick the box for a state to qualify. And a state has to be willing to do it. You know, it's extremely important to have strong political backing for a project like this. It's huge. Okay. These are huge projects, yeah.
Okay, what are the benefits? Let's look at the benefits.
Thank you very much. This is, you know, the distinctive thing about a special agro-industrial processing zone is that it's different from your normal special economic zone, which is usually built around a port, around a seaport, so you process and you export. The unique thing about the special agro zone is that it is deliberately located within the agrarian communities in peri-urban areas. In other words, we are using this policy to force a structural transformation of our rural areas. This was the uniqueness. This is the uniqueness of you see, you call it agro-industrial. A special economic zone could be high-tech, it could be for pharmaceuticals, it could be, but this is deliberately targeted to our comparative advantage, which is agriculture. But we want to do agriculture in a modern sense. We want to industrialize agriculture. So what are the benefits? We want to stem rural-urban migration. We want to turn zones of poverty in our rural areas into zones of prosperity. We want to be able to stop, say, for example, the herders-farmers clash. 2 of the states, for example, I think 3 of them actually want to focus on livestock, Kwara and FCT, and to some extent Imo also. So when you have a modern farming system and ranching, this again begin to resolve the security issues that we have. Not a country like this should be doing what we are doing. You know, we shouldn't be doing this. So we hope that the agro zones, whatever they are processing, and the commodities were selected by themselves. You know, each state will ask them to select your top 3 commodities: cassava, cocoa, whatever it is, rice. And then we now are working with them to now have what we call the end-to-end solution. So instead of simply just exporting cocoa, you want to process cocoa into cocoa butter and others. Instead of just exporting cassava, you process them into industrial starch, you process them into all manner of foods, for example, and you add value. This is really had been the bane of Africa, simply just farming and shipping it to others who benefit. The cocoa industry, for example, Africa supplies 70%. It's $100 billion, the chocolate industry, $100 billion. What does Africa get? 6 billion. Because everything else, you have shipped your employment to those countries that have the technological capability to process.
Okay, what makes this initiative different from other initiatives that we've had in the past? And at the end of the day, when it gets to implementation, it becomes something else.
This is, I'm sure you are skeptical. In fact, some people are still skeptical. They ask us, oh, when it gets to your country, they are going to dabaru it anyway. This is what, the policy, you know, there are 3 steps. The theory is sound. The policy is sound. It is the practice that is always in the challenge for Nigeria. We have fantastic development plans. The policy is sound. It's been practiced. That's why I cited to you. Korea has 900 industrial parks, 900. 60% of their GDP come from those zones. China has 2,500 parks. Almost 50% of their GDP come from those zones. I just mentioned to you a country that shouldn't be in front of Nigeria, like Vietnam. 376 industrial parks. 60% of their GDP come. It is us. It is governance. It is the institutions, it is politics, and it is bureaucracy. If we are able to surmount, and this is really why we are making such strenuous effort, ensuring we carry everybody along. You know, in Nigeria, you didn't carry me along, I destroy it. This is why we are doing this. So you pray for us, because it's not in anybody's interest that this should fail.
Okay, how will this strengthen our position in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement?
Yeah, you said.
How would this strengthen our position?
As a matter of fact, one of the big advantages of zones is that you can also have regional hubs. Okay. And we are hoping that once we have this, we are able to add value to our products, to our materials. And then we can export among ourselves within the continent. If you are not able to compete in the European market or an Asian market, at least you can compete within the African market. And you know, manufacturing and industrialization is about learning over time. You get more competitive the more you practice. In fact, the reason we are backward is that we have taken the what I call the low road of development. Just dig up oil, share among yourselves, and then all these 50, 60 years, others have been developing their industrial capacity.
Okay, before I let you go briefly,
yes.
Tell us about the selected commodities, actually.
So the commodities basically are those that are concentrated in those states. Okay. As I told you, for example, we agree with the clients, that's the states. Give us your top 3 commodities. Say Ogun State will say cassava, rice, and something else. Say FCT says we just want to focus on livestock because we have cattle and we have challenges. Say which other states? Oyo State, they also, for example, covers cassava, rice. We have some that are common to the tropics, and we have some that in the north, for example, you have states that are focusing on rice. You want to raise the scale. We are getting there with rice, for example, since Dr. Adesina's revolution started in 2011. But we want to get to a point where we are net exporters.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senior Special Advisor to African Development Bank, President on Industrialization, Professor Oyebanji Oyelara Oyeyinka. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Now moving on, gold prices fell slightly on Tuesday, although they hovered above the key psychological level of $1,800 on expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve might delay cutting back its stimulus amid rising cases of the Delta coronavirus variant. Let's now take a trip to the commodities market. The passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill as well as Nigeria's gas initiatives will help transform Nigeria into a gas-based industrialized nation and also create a better managed petroleum industry with more value addition for both investors and Nigerians alike. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo stated this at a virtual event on the gas initiative being implemented by the Buhari administration. Details with Gideon Ifade.
The federal government, as Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says, locally launched into the brave new world for the oil and gas industry with the Petroleum Industry Act 2021, adding that the main goal of the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill and the gas initiatives is to transform Nigeria not only into a gas-based industrialized nation through enhanced accelerated gas revolution, but also to help create a better managed petroleum industry where both the people of Nigeria and investors alike can extract value.
While the federal government is building coalitions with other affected countries to urge a just transition as we advance to zero transmission, I will urge indigenous energy companies such as yourselves to join in the very urgent advocacy that is required to prevent the disaster that would result from defunding oil and gas projects.
And not only that,
the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will offer new vistas for business. But your participation and your contributions to some of the negotiations that are going on even now will be helpful to see that we're able to get the very best value from this next round of negotiations.
The next 25 years, Vice President Osinbajo said, will be defining for the energy industry.
Now, in our Surviving COVID-19 series, is a story of a young entrepreneur who ventured into a palm oil business as put together by Bosede Abel.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
After searching for a job for 2 years, Rosemary Ochibo Enechojo decided to join her sisters to resuscitate the family business of palm oil making and selling in remembrance of their late mother.
This was actually born out of passion. We want to take people off eating adulterated oil in the market. How can we produce this thing? Of course, we're not ready to go back to producing it the old way that it used to be done, with putting leg in the palm fruit and matching it and all that. So it was open out of interest, out of the fact that we wanted to reach out to a lot of people, you know, employment and all that. So we were able to set up a mini factory. It's a small factory located in Lokoja, Kogi State. That's where the oil is produced by us and also packaged by us.
She started the business in 2018, and barely 2 years after, when she was still trying to develop her business, COVID-19 struck.
The major thing that actually helped us to stay afloat was taking the business online. We did not make more money during the lockdown. No, at all. But we just tried to keep afloat.
Sourcing for raw materials of palm fruits and packaging are the major challenges for this kind of business.
Well, it's not been easy, to be very, very honest with you. From fabricating the machines to getting raw materials, it's been really taxing because, you know, when you don't have a farm of your own, because we're still young, we're still coming up, we're still, you know, growing and planning and all that. So we tend to source for these materials, raw materials, which is like the basic of everything. Because without raw material, you can't get anything. And the aim is to produce this thing ourselves. So you can have pride of, okay, this oil is brought, I bought this oil from these people, you know, it's not adulterated, it's a clean oil. If there's any this thing, you'll be responsible for it. So we're actually NAFDAC certified. I don't know if I've mentioned that. So we've done a lot of work.
Despite all, Rosemary says the demand for her palm oil is one major fulfillment to her, as she hopes that her brand continues to thrive.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Now that wraps this edition of Business Express. Remember to keep in touch with us, so do send in your comments and observations as well as suggestions. Also be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTS channel. Business Express returns Wednesday at 3 p.m. Be safe out there. I am Musa Abubakar.